I realized that I was really into game design. I probably have like a collection of like 30 to 50 game design books now. I didn't play a lot of Zynga games like in my free time. I think the interesting thing about that vision is it requires a game that's quite scopy. Like it's gonna be a big game.
I think we were spoiled at Zynga with how much we appreciated the data and the people that we had there that could crunch the numbers and figure the things out and know what to track.
I think data, looking at things with a keen eye on what is working, what is not working, was like just part of our DNA. One really big thing that Zynga did is churn out amazing product managers. Like you can already see that.
For me, I feel like I really value data informed more so than data driven. Metrics and data are like proxies for something we're all familiar with as consumers, which is fun. It's like enjoyment of the game, right? It's like you look at everything and then your unique like perspective on it is what determines how much you weight stuff. Do they like the game enough to keep playing in their like normal lives, you know?
Yep.
And so that's never going to change. Just like making a game fun is never going to become less important.
All right. Hello, everyone. We are excited because last time you just saw the boring faces of CJD and me on our first episode. This time we have an amazing guest. I call her a friend. She's working with us at, and she's the founder of Squid Games, which is an amazing game studio. And so welcome, Jackie. Jackie, I'll let you introduce yourself really quickly. And, we're really excited to talk to you, learn about your game and about your team.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me. I'm Jackie. I started Squid Games about 3-4 years ago, and we're working on new genres of mobile game. Our current title is out, actually, although we're iterating a lot on it. It's called Jelly Veil. It's like match 3 platformer, cozy town builder. And yeah, happy to be here. Looking forward to our conversation. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, by the way, for people who don't know this, me and Jackie worked together on the Words with Friends division. That's where we met. You were on Crosswords, correct? And then you took over some more roles?
Yeah, I was on Words first, and then I was on Crosswords, and then I was owning Boggle as well.
Oh, Boggle. That one's near and dear to my heart.
Yeah? Wait, were you on Boggle? I don't think I knew that.
No, but one of the first games we wrote at Zynga way back in the day was the Scramble game, which is basically Boggle.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So no, that's cool. So Jackie, talk to us a little bit about. Let's talk about our journey, which is when did you start, or when did you decide that you want to build your own game studio? How was it fundraising? Why did you pick match 3 versus so many other genres? Why did you pick mobile? Obviously tons of questions, but would love to hear what is that moment where you're like, yes, I want to be an entrepreneur and run my own company.
Yeah. So I've been like, I guess I would call myself like a gamer since I was, in middle school. I played a lot of console games. So like I have a younger brother, so we played like a lot of Halo.
Yeah.
I played Madden, a little bit of COD, like Zelda games, stuff like that. We tennis, just I guess like we had a lot of consoles, so I like played a lot of different kinds of games. So I really love games, and my first gaming role was I was on Star Wars Commander, which is like a Disney. I think it was Playdom, but then they got acquired by Disney, and it was like a Star Wars mobile game, and that was really fun. And I joined Zynga in the rotational product manager role, which is like they recruit out of college. And it was really cool. Like I started on Words with Friends, which I think is probably like one of the coolest like PM, like placements to start out with. Cause I think it probably still is, but this was like, 5-6 years ago. So it was like a cash cow. It was really big. Big team of PMs, like a lot of analytics, like a lot of really formalized systems in place for like, we had like shifts like over like the holidays. It's like I owned Christmas like in my first year, and I had to send out a report on Christmas. It was like one of my first reports that like went out to the whole org, and I was like, would really love to have been able to run this past someone, but I guess this is what's happening.
Of course, they shoved the holiday shifts on the new people.
Yeah, well, so everybody got a shift, but I didn't feel like I had to get Christmas. Like that felt like it was maybe due to my newness in the org. But yes, it was really cool to like train on Words with Friends. I moved to Crosswords and then owned Boggle, as I mentioned earlier. And because those were smaller games, I got the chance to like do a lot of feature design. So we launched I like designed and launched events on Crosswords and like a mini crossword feature that like I also designed, which our format of it actually like wasn't like in existence at the time yet. So we had to like come up with like how mini crosswords would look on mobile.
Yeah.
And it was really fun. And so I realized that I was really into game design. I probably have like a collection of like 30 to 50 game design books now. And that's like when I got my first one, Book of Lenses, like The Art of Game Design by Jesse Shell around then. And so I started thinking about like, I didn't play a lot of Zynga games like in my free time. And a lot of people I talked to at Zynga also didn't. And that's not to say that Zynga games are like bad or anything like that, but I think a lot of people go into games because they're like core gamers, you know what I mean? Like it's like you played like console games as a kid. Yeah. Oh, I'm going to work in games, you know? And so like you end up with like a lot of people who are working at these studios who like love games, are gamers, but don't actually have a lot of personal interest in the games they're working on. And so I was thinking like, what would it look like to make like a casual game that's like one that I would really love playing, you know? And so one of the kind of like frameworks that I used to like think about this, and also what I used when I was pitching to investors, was like, what does like Legend of Zelda like look like on casual mobile, right? Where it's like obviously trying to make the game Legend of Zelda on casual mobile is like ludicrous. But like if you made a version of that would like tempt Candy Crush players, like what would that look like, you know? And so we kind of like landed on our investment pitch angle of like all forms of media like kind of have really rabid fan bases, like as a sub cohort of their like fan bases. Like, you know, people like cry when they go to Disneyland or like get tattoos of Pixar characters, and how come that's like not a thing for casual mobile? So that was kind of like the genesis of that. That was a long time ago. I haven't thought about it in a while. Yeah.
I was just to say, so your game, your Jellyville, my kids play it constantly.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah, I haven't let them spend on it yet, but we will.
Shame.
And so. Is that game? Does that game prescribe to what you just said? You mash together these cohorts or these genres to.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the manifestation of that vision. I think the interesting thing about that vision is it requires a game that's quite scopy. Like it's going to be a big game, and like as a result, our MVP that we launched with is just the core. Like kind of like it's like you explore in the forest to get like jellies via matching, and it's we have like a character in game as your kids know, and you clear jellies to like get to the endpoint, and then you can keep the jellies. And then back in town, you can solve like fairy tale quests. Like every character in our game is an animal, but they're like a fairy tale. So with like Cinderella, Little Red Riding Hood, that kind of thing. And you can solve their quests, and you can also use your leftover jellies to like build cozy stuff for your town, like decorated. There's like windmills you can get, like lawn flamingos, stuff like that. And so what we're doing now basically is we got the bones out and we've been polishing and like perfecting the first like 5 minutes of the game to open the funnel as much as possible. We have our release with all that stuff coming out in 2 weeks actually. And then now we're going to start building on it to like hit that like promise of like feature density of like world building and stuff like that.
Cool.
I always say this, and Jackie, hopefully you'll concur, and CDU as well. I think one really big thing that Zynga did is churn out amazing product managers. Like you can already see that a lot of product managers coming out of Zynga have taken over so many roles at all these amazing companies. Some of them have started their own companies. And that's just because I think data, looking at things with a keen eye on what is working, what is not working, was like just part of our DNA. And I think that goes to show with what you said right now, which is, you're obviously tracking things, you're analyzing things. It's all about data. You figure out what are the things that you need to push on, improve on, and what are the things that are working. And I think that is very important. I think any other entrepreneur I meet who's in this space and I always say, listen, go talk to someone like Jackie. or for that matter, any Zynga PM. So talk to us about the importance of data for viewers here who are gamers, but they probably don't know the importance of analytics, tracking, experimentation.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting. I have kind of mixed feelings about it. Like, it's definitely necessary. Like, visibility is always going to be better than no visibility, right? Like, you always want to know. No matter how you use the data, you just need to know. If you don't know, then you're operating in like ignorance, right? And so like, for me, I feel like I really value data informed more so than data driven. And one of the reasons for that is like, because we're a new genre, a lot of the best practices that I learned don't necessarily apply one-to-one. And what I mean by that is like, metrics and data are like proxies for something we're all familiar with as consumers, which is fun. It's like enjoyment of the game, right? And like we look at those metrics because it's the best way we can quantify why a game isn't fun or is fun for our users that we're targeting, for like the specific players that we think this game is for. However, they are not actually fun. Like they don't actually, no one of these metrics actually capture if the game is fun. So like I was recently talking to there's this guy in Singapore who's like, he basically led the distribution of League of Legends in Asia. And he was like there from like the very beginning of the, the genesis of this game. And he was talking about how it had really terrible day one retention. And it's interesting because in the casual mobile world, like with like non-new genres, basically. So like if you're kind of trying to make like a reskinned version of, Candy Crush, or like put your own like, slight spin on like Homescapes or whatever. A terrible D1 is like, you got to just kill it. Like that's like, you can't compete, right? Like they already figured out how to get their game to like crazy D1. And if you come out the gate with like less than half of that, it's like, how much can you fix it, right? Like, but for a game that is presenting something new, or and this is especially true in like horror games as well, what that metric tells you is actually exactly what it promises to tell you, which is who is staying on the first day after install, which is not actually a full proxy necessarily for how good is this game going to be. As like is proved by like League of Legends, Dota 1, these games all have really poor day one retention. So I think for me, like these metrics are really important. It's you have to know if you're losing everybody on day zero. But you also need to, like, as a founder, have conviction, which is like, I think this is a thing for entrepreneurs, which is just that like you have to be able to believe in it when nobody else believes in it. And like, so for me, like, I think my form of that is I know what this game is like supposed to be like, and I know that like the vision that my team and I have is like real and valid, and can have like a manifestation as like a game that like blows people away. And so what do I look at and what don't I look at in terms of weighing crucial decisions?
That is very interesting. You're absolutely right. It is a combination of two, because I mean, data is one, but at the end of the day, we make games because games are fun. And so for our viewers, I mean, what are some of the tools you'll use to gauge? Yes, I mean, there's obviously internal conviction. Your team plays it on a day-to-day basis. The people at Snapchat are playing it. But are there any other tools that, Game Studio uses, like playtest, or, just talk to us about those angles?
Yeah, so I think it's like no one thing is going to give you everything. So like playtests are great, but like how 25 people feel about the game is not going to be like definitive, right? Like you don't like see a positive playtest and be like, cool, I'm like $30 million investing in this. So like, it's like really like it's like you look at everything and then your unique like perspective on it is what determines how much you weight stuff. And this is kind of what we learned at Zynga as well, where it's like, oh my God, it's Christmas Day, for instance. And sessions are like down more year over year than they were last Christmas. What is going on, right? So like there's like the simple theory, which is people are just having Christmas dinner with their families, right? Like maybe that's why. But then it's like, well, it's year over year though, actually. So are they enjoying Christmas dinner more than they were this time last year? And so like you'll see this in a lot of like PM interviews where it's like, hey, sessions are down crazy amount today. How do you figure out what's wrong with it? Mm-hmm. And the general correct PM interview answer is, are there any tech issues that we should be aware of? Are we having server issues? Is it a holiday in some major locale in the world where like this might be impacting our player base? What about like unusual things that happened this week? Was it daylight savings? You know, like, so like there's like a bunch of like, and I guess what I'm getting at with that is that you have to like just know everything in order to be able to make your personal informed decision.
I still remember.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, no, sorry, go on, CJD.
I was just gonna say, it's not just like you said. Sometimes you have to do a gut check. Is there a technical problem here? Like it is a full studio awareness.
Yeah.
To be looking at all that data. Definitely, when I worked on poker at Zynga, we learned so much about exactly what you just said because it's a worldwide game. And so when there were like popular soccer matches going on in the world, we'd get this W.
That's a big one.
People would log back in during halftime and then the sessions would drop and then come back after the soccer.
Yeah. You know, funny, I was exactly going to give that same example. I so vividly remember this. So I was at Zynga and the World Cup was going on. And I know at Zynga, they were showing that on the big screen. And one of my backend engineers was with me. We were like, working. And he's like, AJ, there's a big dip happening. And it was because the World Cup game had started and used to come back during halftime. So it was really, really awesome to see that.
That's so cool. Yeah, it's really interesting when like, because it's so easy to like get lost in the metrics as like someone who works on the game side. Yeah. And like you forget that it intersects with the real world and real people. And that's like what I mean when I say it's like none of this captures fun, right? Like none of this captures that like everyone's gonna be back after the World Cup necessarily. You have to like kind of like form these connections using all the information that you have.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think one surprising thing when I left Zynga and AJ and I started doing snaps I think we were spoiled at Zynga with how much we appreciated the data and the people that we had there that could crunch the numbers and figure the things out and know what to track. Because we have heard a number of times now, other studios, other people making games and creating experiences in games, and they will say things like, I feel like something happened here. I feel like there was a change in my game. I'm seeing a more CCU or whatever, but I just don't know why. How can I? And they're like asking, what their hands are in the air like this, and like, how do you not know why? Like, use
that's
tools,
your job.
man. Yeah. And so like they're not even aware of how important getting the data in early on so that you can like essentially drive your game. I know you don't want to say data driven, but you're driving some of the decisions based on your analytics. So
I love that term Jackie you use, which is data informed. I love that. I'm going to pick on that. So, moving on to another angle, which is obviously very relevant to mobile gaming, is IDFA, right? I mean, that obviously changed the game. You're building in that same space. How has that impacted you? How should a new entrepreneur building a mobile game, be it a venture-backed studio or something as a hobby project, how does this impact them?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the biggest thing is that like the thing with IDFA is that it did not impact all game makers equally, right? Mm-hmm. Like I think the biggest thing it did probably is dramatically change the competitive edge that existing huge studios had. Mm-hmm. So it was like previously, like anybody could like kind of, you had the same information kind of that they did. They kind of knew who like played, I don't know, like Monopoly and Boggle, or whatever. That's actually Scopely and Zynga, but yeah.
Shout out Scopely.
But they knew who played like the same two games in their network. Yeah. But you as like a small dev still knew that like, this is the demographic of like even your small cohort of installs. And so like now the good news is that we are all small studios are pretty much similarly like, it's like the sinking tide lowers all boats. Like everyone's in the same situation now, except for big studios. Mm-hmm. And so this is not, and I think this is also kind of correlated to the increase in like M&A activity in the last like since IDFA, basically, where it's like, this is a perfect time to snap up small studios if you're like a big corporation. But I mean, I think that like I have my own like personal take on it, and then I have like the advice that I would give to like, people who are trying to like come into the industry, which is just that like, if you're trying to come into the industry, the most important thing is that you have to worry about user acquisition so much more than before. Like, it's no longer just like a CPI in, installs out thing necessarily. It is in a way. I mean, it's always that. It's always unit economics. But it's not for someone predicting how their game is going to do. You can no longer bank on a $5 like CPI or like $5 to $6 CPI. Like, you just don't. It's up in the air. You don't know for sure how you're going to be able to target as well anymore. The difference between $5 and $5.60 can bankrupt a game. Like, this is like, you need to have a strategy for like organic growth. And I think that like, that's actually one edge that small studios have and like indie devs have, which is that these big corporations are a little bit slower to move. So one interesting thing is that all these companies for the last like 3 to 5 years have been trying to spin up organic marketing. And we have not seen yet a great organic marketing campaign from like any of these big companies. I would argue. And so like, I think that's the edge that you have to play now if you're new.
That's pretty interesting. So in fact, it's almost leveling the playing field and giving some little bit of power back to the smaller gaming studios, which is something I love to see. So kind of double clicking on this. See, retention, as we all know, is extremely important to game making, right? But see, before the IDFA changes, there were also some hyper casual game studios which just worked out of pumping in money, and then even though the retention numbers were not that strong necessarily, a business would survive. Is retention now even more important? Yes, organic growth is important, but yes, you have to be like really fixated on keeping people in your game, keeping that fun going. Talk to me about how do you see retention here?
I think retention has always been and will always be one of the most important things. And it's because it's like, if we're talking about proxies for fun, it's how long do they want to play your game, right? Like, it's like, you can call it like D1, D7, D14. It's just, do they like the game enough to keep playing in their like normal lives, And so that's never going to change. Just like making a game fun is never going to become less important. But if we're talking like strictly from a metrics perspective, I would actually say that if you can crack organic marketing, retention is kind of less important. And it's because like, it's strictly a unit economics thing, right? Where it's like, if I'm paying $5.75 per install, this is paid marketing, not organic, right? Then it really matters that like a lot of those people say, and so that some smaller section can pay, and then some smaller section can pay for years. And like, that's where like I need to get like my money back. And the direct like analogy is that an organic install is completely free, right? So like if half of my installs are organic, my cost per install just went down by like 50%, right? So like, I no longer have to like, they need to stay because I want to make a fun game and because I can make more money if they stay longer. But I don't like desperately need like the same level of metric that I would have if all of my installs are paid.
So are entrepreneurs like you? Yes, obviously the focus is on getting organics, but I'm pretty sure you'll still want to layer in a little bit of paid marketing as well to kind of then balance that out. So how do you see that? Or is it more of a tactical thing that you see data on and then kind of keep changing it on a month-to-month basis? So talk to me about the balance between the two worlds.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the way I would think about it is like, you have to assume that you're not going to be able to do organic marketing because you can't bank on it. You know what I mean? That's ridiculous. Like, you can't like, your pitch can't be, we're going to be able to organically market the game. And so like, it's kind of just gravy, right? And so it's like, back to League of Legends, like one thing that they said is if like, everybody talks about like paid UA. It's kind of the way that the casual mobile industry works right now. Actually, maybe just mobile in general is paid UA. But if you have to pay for every install that you get, it's a viable business model, but you might never hit the kind of game that you want to make. And so what this team said is like, if every person who plays your game brings in one other person, you are now going to be like a Fortune 500 company. Like that's it. You don't ever have to spend another cent on like.
I was just going to say that your paid UA can accelerate your organic. Like it can basically be a booster for the organic marketing.
Yeah. So I think it's like the goals are kind of separate. You really want organic to take off,
Yes.
both for like design goals and for like, metric driven goals. But like paid is always going to play a role.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
This, anyone hearing this is going to obviously feel like we've spoken so much about metrics and what have you. There is obviously a PM on this podcast, but now let me move attention toward team, right? So, one thing which, starting your company is one thing. It's a mammoth task. Then building a team is a whole another thing. Getting in the right culture you want to set for your team is something that you have to almost do on a daily basis. Tell us more about your team. Who is in your team? How are you, setting up the culture for Squid? Right from the get go. Would just love to hear about that angle.
And any gossip too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just all the dirty laundry. Yeah. I love our team so much. Like, I think that. It's kind of so recruiting was hard. The first person is like impossible to recruit, especially if you're not like going into it with like two co-founders or like whatever. Like I'm just from their perspective, I'm just like a person, right? Who like no longer works at Zynga actually. And like I'm telling them that I quit, but maybe I was fired, who knows? And so like, so that first person is like insanely hard to recruit. And also for me, like I was a first-time founder. I am a first-time founder. And like I was 3 years out of college. And so like I don't have the credibility of like a repeat founder. Or even an MBA, I guess, you know what I mean? So that was really tough, but it's kind of like a flywheel. Like the first one makes the second one easier, makes the third one easier, and so on and so forth. And now recruiting for our team is substantially easier than I think it ever has been. And I think maybe even more so than like average. And that kind of goes into the culture thing where it's like, for me, the thing I look for when bringing someone on is like, are they going to help or hurt the culture? And that sounds kind of trite, but it's like there was this study done that was talking about like group dynamics and like how it impacts like creativity. And like, so basically the idea is that creativity comes directly from a feeling of safety in your team. And it's like, you want to feel like you can say something fast and maybe it's dumb, but it's fine. No one's going to like roast you or like kick you off the team, And so what they found was that the single worst thing for a group of people trying to come up with an idea is one person not even saying anything, just with body language messaging boredom and like disdain. So this one person can completely kill a whole group of people's like creativity. And so that's like really important for me because like my team is a creative team and we're a creative org, like all, game studios are, or at least should be. And so like, I want to make sure that everyone I bring on is a nice person, is genuinely interested and passionate about making a game that people are going to love. And like, that's kind of like their foundation. And so our culture is very like people first, like it's a little bit like corny, I guess, but I think it's really serious for me is that like the ranking of the three things in a company is people, product, and profits in that order. And it's not because you sacrifice one to get the other, but it's because it's a pyramid and you're not going to be able to like achieve the thing that you want in the way that you want if you kind of like borrow principles from one to feed the other.
Yeah. And when you're starting out, you just don't have the time or the money to be wrong with people. And so you really need them to get along. And you're small. And I know it sounds even cornier to say like a family, but you're going to spend all your time together.
Yep.
And you have to work together. Like you really cannot have one person sucking the air out of the room or like making other people not want to come to a meeting or anything like that. You just cannot afford it. It is bad business. And so we totally align with you on this and went the same route where we literally have in our interviewing process, we index heavily on culture and fit and everyone gets a chance to talk. And we have a very informal, just, are we going to get along? Is this going to go well? How do you handle conflict? And and how do we handle conflict? And then AJ drops a few little hot take type questions like, you know what, maybe you shouldn't work here. Why do you want to work here?
Yeah, that's my favorite part of the interview process. Yeah, we can do a whole segment on that. But I want to actually, for the viewers here, I want to actually appreciate what someone like Jackie really does when, you start a company. And I'll tell you where I'm coming from, right? So, see, you're at the end of the day building a game which needs someone to build the game. You are coming with your expertise of game design and product. So the first person you're trying to hire, or even trying to convince someone I can build this, is 10x harder than I would say someone like me, because I could whip up a prototype really, really quickly at Snapster. So tell me about that. Like, how would you recommend other entrepreneurs who perhaps don't have a co-founder who can build? Because you're one of the few people I know where you're a solo founder. You're obviously not an engineer, but an amazing PM and a game designer. How do you get started? I would be really, really struggling, but you've obviously, gone through that.
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to just be really real with yourself on like your plan, I think a common thing a lot of people say is like the first person I want to hire is an engineer if they're not a technical founder, right? Because I think it's like one-to-one. It kind of literally is one-to-one where it's like, well, can you make the game or not, right? Or is it just like a whiteboard drawing? Yeah. So like, that's like, I think a really common instinct, but we actually hired an artist first. And it's because in my plan, I was like, the one thing I have going for me is I have like a vision for a game, and I think people can pick up on the fact that I like genuinely care about it. So like what I'm pitching as a non-technical founder is the vision, and they have to trust me and they have to buy in on the vision. And as a result, I wanted an artist because that's going to be the best way I can like message certain like visions for the game. And so we had an artist first, Erica. She was my first employee, and we kind of like, so like I had her like basically illustrate how it might look, backgrounds for the game, kind of like all the different like style stuff. We were going for like a very like Legend of Zelda kind of like fantasy like vibe, but like accessible fantasy, and then that was the art we used when we got engineering contractors and the play tests. And our look has evolved a lot, but I think from the beginning, like one thing that was clear to me is like, one, it's going to be very, very difficult, if not impossible, for me to hire the type of engineer I want if they're my first hire. That I have to then go to an engineer who's making like $350,000 and be like, what do you think about just trying something,
Yeah.
So that's like ludicrous. So like, I was like, this is going to be my angle because these are my strengths, and this is what's going to make someone buy in later,
Yeah. No, awesome. I think we're coming toward the end of this. I think one thing which, I've obviously said this to Jackie many times, but for those who don't know, she is one of the first people who took a chance on Snapster. She's our first design partner. We've been working with her game studio for over a year. And I feel, she's been one of the most amazing partners we have. So Jackie, like really thank you for taking a chance on us. Hopefully we've not disappointed you. And we're obviously looking forward to not just helping you with this game, but, building a massive gaming studio with you.
Totally.
Also, thank you for helping us. We've come to you for some of our PM and numbers and stuff, and help for that, because we know where to go to for this stuff. So thank you as well for that.
It's been so awesome working with you guys. Like, I know earlier we mentioned that like AJ and I met on the Words with Friends team, but like you guys always use the language of like, oh, like Squid Games was like one of the first to like take a chance on Snapster. I didn't feel like we were taking a chance on you. Like if anything, I was like, oh, thank God! Like, so like a back end, like brilliant, like the person in charge of like back end on Words with Friends can now be accountable for our back end instead of me. Like, excellent! This is perfect. So, I think what you guys are doing is very cool and has made like operating my team and my game a lot easier. So, thank you.
Awesome. Well, so thanks again, Jackie, for joining our show here. We really appreciate it, and we hope to bring you back in the near future to get some more updates. Last parting words: what can viewers expect with your game? What are your plans of launching them? How can they access it?
Totally. So the game is called Jelly Veil, a Match Tale. It's on App Store and Google Play. It's on App Store and I think almost every country now, but it's on Google Play in like a smaller subset. And cool things are coming. I would actually say like maybe like don't install it quite yet. Maybe like wait a little bit because some crazy stuff is coming. And I mean, if it sounds like their jam, they should play it and send us feedback. We have like a link in the game, and we like check the inbox every day. And check out our socials. We're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, and yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, everyone. And Jackie, all the best with the launch and the future.
Thank you.